Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel. We got the entirety of day 2 to look at here at the Lille Regionals, which happened this weekend. Of course, the Lille Regionals happened. It's a bit of a smaller one. There's only 79 players in day 2, it looks like, but this is definitely going to be an interesting one, as of course, this is the Regionals that is just before Toronto, as Toronto Regionals is this weekend, and this meta could honestly dictate what ends up doing good over in Toronto. Of course, the European regionals are usually a little bit different than the ones we have. The meta is always a bit different. The decks that are popular and that do well usually are different over in Europe. So it is interesting to kind of see what did well here. Of course, if you are new here to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below and leave a like on the video if you're going to enjoy the video here. And I'll leave a link to Limitless if you want to go check out these deck lists yourself and maybe look into what you might want to bring to Toronto based off of what did well here in Lille. So, of course, we do have the top 8 to look at here. And the deck that actually won the regional, believe it or not, was Fusion Mew, a deck that has kind of fallen off recently or just slipped out of favor. I think a lot of people are kind of off of Fusion Mew right now, and that's just mainly because Double Turbo Mew is the one that does the best right now. We got the Grabber and the Luxray build, but Fusion Mew, I think, kind of naturally has to come back into the forefront if you're going to be playing Mew, and the reason for that is because of Spiritomb. Spiritomb is very popular right now. A lot of decks are teching Spiritomb, and I think the other big thing with Spiritomb is that the Fusion build actually has a way to beat Spiritomb. Obviously, you can put Fusion Energy onto your Genesects, and you can draw cards. You can also use the Ice Cube, you can use the Meloetta, which are also really good in the deck. And yeah, I think that Fusion Mew is definitely primed to be a fine archetype right now with all of the Spiritomb running around. This build does have some interesting stuff in it. It is playing an Avery and a Trekking Shoe, two cards you don't usually see in Fusion Mew. Avery's interesting. Avery can be very good against Shenpao, and sometimes Lost Box. Sometimes Avery can be annoying, because if your opponent does have a Spiritomb in play, you can Avery them, and it's like, well, you kind of have to keep the Spiritomb, but you have to get rid of two other cards that you kind of need to keep. So it can be awkward for the opponent, and I guess against Shenpao it's good, and Gardevoir. And here is the list that won the regional. It's pretty, like, standard build otherwise. It does have some other interesting things. Again, that Trekking Shoes is interesting, the One of Shoes. No Iono, playing Roxanne and Judge instead for some hand disruption is interesting, but it's a pretty simple Fusion Mew list and looks pretty solid to me. And again, with all the Spiritomb going around, Fusion Mew might be good. Second place, we do have a Turbo Lost Box deck. It is playing Spiritomb, as you can see, but it also has Ditto and Cross Switcher. So Ditto's kind of cool. Ditto can turn into a 5th Comfey on your first turn of the game. It's actually pretty good in my opinion. And then, of course, you do have the Cross Switcher in the deck, which allows you to make some pretty crazy plays happen. Cross Switcher does mean you have to sub out other switching cards, but it still has, room to play 3 switch card and 3 rope. It's a very interesting take on Turbo Lost Box, and the Cross Switcher definitely do have some value. I actually saw in, I think it was top 4, the Turbo Lost Box player was able to Cross Switcher and stall up a Lugia and play a Roxanne all in one turn and KO the Archeops in that one turn, basically making it so the Lugia player ended up losing the game. And it was a colorless build, which is a matchup you would think, Lost Box struggles against. But this Cross Switcher build is actually kind of unique. There's a lot of really sneaky plays you can make with Cross Switcher. It makes for some really crazy plays that can happen. And I think it's a really unique take on the Turbo build. We'll have to see if the Cross Switcher build ends up doing well in Toronto. Of course, we do have Shenpao in top 4. Shenpao now has a top 4 placement. It's doing better almost every regionals. Maybe it can take down or go to the finals in Toronto. Shenpao's just pretty good. We do see it is the Canadian build here. There is a Manaphy in the deck and a Greninja and Bibarel. It's just everything's the same. It looks like it's just very much the Canadian build of Shenpao. We've kind of all figured out. But Shenpao just keeps doing well. And then in top 4, we do have the Colorless Lugia deck. Again, Colorless Lugia is a very powerful archetype right now. A lot of people say it's the best way to play Lugia. I think Single Strike is still pretty good too, but Colorless does have a better Zard matchup. But yeah, Colorless is very strong. The other thing with Spiritomb is also really good against Colorless Lugia, which is why we see like Double Turbo Mew fall off, is because, well, everyone's playing Tomb now, and then Colorless Lugia is also very bad with Spiritomb because like Lumineon is shut off and Weird Ear is shut off, which is a very big deal. But yeah, Colorless Lugia still continues to be a very strong archetype right now in the meta, and I think will continue to be a good archetype as time goes on, as this deck definitely has answers to a lot of decks in the format right now, and seems really, really strong. And I think Colorless Lugia will still be popular in Toronto. We do have the top 8 having a Lost Tina, a deck that's also been kind of on the downswing, but has had a top 8 placement here. It's a very interesting take on it. It's actually playing 4 switch card. And that's it. There's not that much other switch in the deck. There's Jet Energy and Switch Card, and that's it. No ropes or anything, which is a very interesting take. But it does sub out for like double Roxanne, double Iono, playing a lot more draw in the deck to up the consistency, having 4 paths. Just a very streamlined, consistent build. There's a lot of 4 ofs. It's a very interesting take on Giratina Lost Zone, which probably will see a bit more play in Toronto now that it did well in Lille. I wouldn't be surprised if this deck maybe got a couple good day 2 placements, but I don't know if Tina's still primed right now. I mean, that Calls Lugia matchup is still pretty bad in my opinion, and I think that Giratina will still struggle in this meta, but I think it's still fine, and I think if you want to play Giratina Toronto, this could be a pretty good build. I definitely would say practice with it, because it is a bit different, again, with like the lack of switch and stuff, so definitely kind of give the deck a try. But with like the popularity of Charizard and stuff, Lost Tina doesn't seem like a bad deck at all. We got a Mew in top 8 once again. This time it is a double Turbo Mew. Surprisingly, double Turbo Mew getting this far in the tournament. It is interesting, right, as Spiritomb is popular right now. But double Turbo Mew is still a fine deck. If you aren't playing it Spiritomb, it can actually still be pretty good. You have the Luxray, got the Judge Path, the Penny, the Grabber. Still a lot of really cool plays you can make with this deck. And it's still a bit more like technical than the Fusion build. The Fusion build does have better counters to Spiritomb, and I think overall Double Turbo Mew is going to start falling off, especially in Toronto. This might be the last we see of Double Turbo Grabber Mew for a while in top 8, because again, with how popular Spiritomb is, it's just maybe not worth it. We do have a Goodra in top 8, which is always cool to see. Gudra is kind of like the sleeper deck of the format right now. It seems like it's a pretty solid deck. I mean, Gudra is very annoying to knock out. It's got that Moisture Star. This deck also gets to play like a Lost Box deck with the Sableye and the Zamazenta. So while you kind of have these other big annoying attackers, you also have access to Gudra. So you have a lot of really powerful walls and Pokemon within this deck, kind of combining for a pretty strong Lost Box deck. Like, Gudra can be very powerful, but when you also can combine that with cards like Zamazenta and Sableye, you have yourself a pretty strong take on Gudra, and I think Gudra will continue to probably see like these little results. I don't think it's ever going to be like a super popular deck, but I do think that it will keep seeing these results here and there, because it's a deck that kind of goes under the radar. Nobody really cares for it. Nobody really respects it, and it kind of just can come in and sweep out wins. So it is cool to see Gudra in top 8. And then we also got a Guardian top 8. Of course, Gardevoir being a very strong deck still. Nothing really to write home about with Guardy. It is a build playing Champions Festival, something that we have not seen in a very long time. It's not playing at the Lumineon V, but it's playing at the Zacian. No Mew EX, no Spiritomb in the deck either. Playing a Zinnia and a Research is interesting, though. And that was the top 8. Outside the top 8, there is another Fusion Mew. This build is the exact same one that won the tournament. It looks like same list, playing the Avery and the Trekking Shoe. And yeah, a lot of Mew. I mean, here's the thing, though. Mew does better in Europe. It's actually not surprising that Mew won. Mew always tends to do better in the European regions and Asia regions, so it kind of makes sense why Mew won, because it's like, it's plot armor at this point. Mew doesn't do as well in North America, but over in Europe and Asia, it wins a lot of tournaments. The highest placing Charizard deck did get 10th place here, and it is an Arvin Zard build here. Pretty streamlined build, playing the Penny, the Ionos, the Double Vacuum, the 1 Entei, the Lumineon. Not playing the Pidgeot V or anything, no other sneaky cards like Delphox, but it's a pretty straightforward Arvinzard. And Arvinzard's still a perfectly fine deck right now, in my opinion. Still, in my opinion, maybe the best way to play it. Another Lugia here in top 16. It is another colorless build here, playing at the Charizard, not playing the Luxray, not even playing the Weird Ear, which is a very interesting card to cut from the deck, but is prioritizing maybe more consistency. It is interesting to not see Weird Ear in the deck. It is playing the Quad Boss, though, and the 4 Research, so heavy supporters. There's a Guardian top 16 once again. This build is a little bit more normal from what we've been seeing with the Workers, the Spiritomb, the Double Versal. Yeah, Guardy continuing to do well. Like I said, Guardy's just always a safe play. We got another Lost Box deck here, another Turbo build. This one is very turbo, as it actually plays a Squawkabilly V in the deck. Now, that's something you don't usually see in Lost Box. It also plays Town Store and Collapse Stadium and Bravery Charm, so a little bit more technology in the deck. The Squawkabilly is kind of cool. Honestly, if you're playing Squawkabilly in Lost Box, I feel like at that point, what if you just go all in and play Kyogre? Because, like, you already have the Squawk. Why not try the Kyogre? I don't know. That seems like an interesting take, actually. But it is cool to see Squawkabilly in Lost Box. I mean, it can make it easier to pull off turn 1, Mirage Gate, technically, right? So, could happen. Another Lugia here in top 16. It is Single Strike this time around, playing the Cobalion. I think Single Strike is actually still a good deck. Like, I think a lot of people are just kind of, like, not respecting it or thinking about it at all, just because Colorless is the better deck right now. I would say Single Strike is obviously... Okay, so I think Single Strike is worse than Colorless right now, in theory. But I do think that Single Strike is still a very fine deck right now to play. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with playing Single Strike at the moment. Obviously, your Charizard matchup is a little shaky. You do play Cobalion, though, so it does make the matchup slightly more tolerable, but it is a bit of an uphill battle, and I actually think Single Strike is better against Miraidon than Colossus is. So you get some trade-offs with Single Strike. I think Single Strike is actually still very good in the meta right now. I think a lot of people are really sleeping on Single Strike. It still feels like it's okay, and if you dodge Charizard, like, the deck still wins. We got another Lost Box in top 8. Looks like another Turbo build here with the Spiritomb tech. And then in top 16, another Giratina deck. This one is different, obviously, than the one in top 8. It's actually playing the Temple of Sinnoh in the deck, obviously, which is really good against Mew. Or Mew. Actually, it's good against Mew. It's also good against Lugia. That's what I meant to say. It does have Spiritomb and Luminion in the deck. So Luminion's definitely an interesting tech card. I mean, being able to find Colress turn 1 is very important. So having access to Fish, and also Fish for Roxanne, I guess, does add some layers of complexity, especially when you can use Aqua Return in a moment's notice. So makes sense. Outside of the top 16, there's another double Turbo Mew. This one does not play the Luxray or the Grabber. It's actually a very consistent, straightforward build. 4 Judge, 4 Forest Seal Stone, 3 Path, 1 Oricorio, 4 Vacuum. Yeah, it is a very straightforward build of double Turbo. Not playing at the Grabbers and stuff is interesting. This build probably just is like, I'm going to just take an Elder Zard, or if Zard sets up, then I lose. If Zard doesn't set up, then I'm going to win. That's kind of the, I guess, the theory behind playing this double Turbo Mew build. An interesting take. We got another Lost Box here, another Turbo build, playing at that one of Spiritomb. We got another Lost Box below it in top 32. It is a Kyogre Lost Box deck. Looks like it is the Sawyer Melbourne build with the Dragonite and the Raikou, the Kyogre. And I kind of think that kind of heading into Toronto, the Zamazenta Kyogre build is still good, and I think it's still a great deck, but I think with how popular Colress Lugia is right now, I think that it is a little risky to play, and I think that the Turbo build here with Dragonite and Raikou is better positioned against Colress Lugia, where the Zam build is a bit more shakier into that matchup. So there's one thing to kind of take note of. We do have another double Turbo Mew. This one is the Grabber build once again. Looks like it's pretty similar to Rowan's build. Got the 3 Judge, the Path, 4 Path, the Box, a Disaster, the 3 Grabber. Yeah, the Luxray is pretty cool. So definitely an interesting double Turbo build. And I think it's still surprising to see double Turbo do well. I don't know if we're going to see double Turbo do well anymore. Again, with how popular Spiritomb is, it's still shaky, but I guess some builds can still squeak in these decent placements. We do have our first Arc variant to look at here, and it is an Arc Dura Mawile deck. So very similar to Braden Elfert's Arc Dura deck. I think Arc Dura's a pretty good deck right now with all the Lugia going around. I mean, Lugia's not going to respect Duraludon, and I don't think it is worth it to respect Duraludon, because, like, you can respect the Dura, but it's like, you're not going to hit that much Dura. The odds a Lugia player hits a Dura is pretty low, but Dura still exists, and this Arc Dura Mawile deck is interesting. Playing the Mawile to be able to trap stuff like Manaphy's and Mews and Luminions. Just any Pokemon that, you know, your opponent can't get rid of can be stuck by Mawile. Having the Super Rod and the Horn in the deck makes it easy to loop a couple Mawiles per game. Having the double Chance Care is also very good. The Judge Path. It's a very cool Arc deck, and I'm a big fan of this deck. So I think it's a really strong archetype. We'll have to see where it goes going forward into Toronto. Another Shempao deck here, top 32. It is the Canadian build, like a pretty straightforward build here of Shempao, the Canadian build. Yet another Gardevoir in day 2. Yeah, Guardy, just straightforward stuff. Playing 11 energy or 11 psychic over the double reversals, I guess, like the one difference to take note of. We got another Lost Box deck here, Turbo Lost Box. Not playing anything too crazy other than double Bravery Charm, which does help a little bit. Again, Bravery Charm, given that extra bulk, can actually make a difference in a lot of scenarios. So that's one thing to take note of. Now, the big deck, I think, in day 2, the one that everyone's hyped about, is the Bayonet EX deck. Yes, Bayonet EX got day 2 in Lille. I think this deck is actually really unique. It's a very interesting take on Bayonet. It's playing Gardevoir EX in the deck, but it does have a lot of other crazy things. You see a Mew EX, you see a Shadow Rider V, we see 3 memory skip rolls over the 70 HP rolls. So this deck is definitely an interesting take. Bayonet obviously can item lock the opponent. It's got Poltergeist, does a big attack. Item locking, though, is obviously good against a lot of decks right now, like Shenpao, Miraidon. Miraidon, I guess, yeah, because it shuts off Generator. Obviously, Charizard. Lost Box is the other big one. Having the Radiant Alakazam lets you do some pretty cool plays with Bayonet, and having the Calamitous Wasteland to trap stuff is very good. But yeah, Gardevoir is nice. I mean, you do have access to Gardevoir as a backup attacker. It's a big, bulky Pokemon. You can also use it to build up other psychic Pokemon in the deck, like Shadow Rider V, which can use Shadow Mist to sometimes lock stuff out of being able to play the game with Path. And also, you have the Mew EX as a nice attacker, too, with Gardevoir. So it's a very interesting deck. This build is actually hard to play. I've actually played it myself. This is quite a hard deck to pilot. There's a lot of really interesting and intricate plays that can be made with this deck. It does require a lot of skill, I think, to pilot a deck like this. But Mateus did pretty good with it. It's an interesting archetype to see in day 2. Hopefully we see more Bayonet. It's a really cool deck. I'd like to see Bayonet do well some more. We got Pedro here getting a pretty good placement here in Lille with the Turbo Lost Box deck, once again playing the Spiritomb in the deck. We're going to see a lot of Tomb going forward, I think. Another Shempao here. Yeah, another build of the Canadian Bibarel build, obviously. We got yet another Guardy deck, and it is, yeah, Gardevoir with double Worker, 2 League Headquarters is interesting, very much respecting the heavy Lost Box meta that we're seeing, and then it's got that Spirit Tomb in the deck, which is also something that Guardy's starting to play more of. We got yet another Shampoo. This time it's not Canadian Shampoo, it's actually Palkia Pidgeot Shampoo. So kind of the unconventional way to play right now is obviously playing it with other Vs and stuff and just not playing the Bibarels, but I mean, you can still get some value out of Palkia. Palkia can still be a really good attacker. You get Star Portal, which can be good if you're hunting down your back Excaliburs. You do have the Pidgeot in the deck, which can be nice. Still playing the Avery and the Iono. Still does play like quad Pokestop. So it is a bit more of a different take on the Canadian Shampoo deck, but it does have some other interesting things. It's just not having the Bibarels, I guess, the only problem. The deck can be weaker to Path, but you do have 5 outs to Stadium, so maybe it's good. Who knows? We'll have to see. We see our Rapid Strike deck here doing well in day 2. Yeah, first Rapid Strike deck of the tourney we're seeing. With how popular Lost Box and Guardy is, Rapid Strike actually seemed like a pretty okay play for Lille. I mean, Guardy and Lost Box are very popular, and they did well in this tournament, so Rapid Strike definitely could have been a really strong play, and we'll still see Rapid Strike do well going forward, in my opinion, because it's Rapid Strike at the end of the day, right? We see our Control deck in day 2, which is a big deal, obviously. Control is a deck that nobody really cares about right now, but it's going to maybe have these placements because people aren't going to respect Control, obviously. Like, you play a deck, it's like, okay, I'm not gonna tech for Control, and then Control comes along and wins a game against you. So yeah, Control definitely is interesting. It's the Snorlax build, alongside having double Pidgeot, which is interesting. Obviously, this deck can be a bit harder to pilot, especially playing Pidgeot. We've seen these Snorlax decks being played before, but not playing any, like, out like any draw engine. It's really just, just Snorlaxes and, maybe the Rotom V, but having the Pidgeot definitely does add a bit more extra layers to the deck, and it is interesting to see Snorlax stall do this well, for sure. We got Brent Tonneson in top 32, once again with the Guardy, playing the Mew EX, no Spirit Tomb. See another Lost Box here, 33rd place. Turbo Lost Box, once again, playing the Town Star, Bravery Charm, and the Tomb. We got another Control deck coming up, actually, I just realized. We got another Guardy here to look at real quick. Yeah, Guardy with the reversal, the vacuum. Only one Stadium is very interesting. The singular collapse Stadium, but is playing a double worker, so could make up for it. Interesting take for sure. We got our first Miraidon to look at. So yeah, Miraidon isn't as popular over in Europe. It's still like it's still a good deck, right? It's still fine. But with all the Guardy and the Lost Box running around, it's not the greatest play for a tournament like this, in my opinion. Obviously, I think Miraidon is going to be popular in Toronto because it's really popular in the GTA and the Toronto area, and it's a better deck for North American regionals. But Miraidon's still getting the day 2 placement, proving that Miraidon can still win games, obviously, because it's still a very powerful deck. We see yet another Lost Box here in day 2, playing at the Spirit Tomb, the double Pokestop. Yeah, just Turbo Lost Box once again. Kind of the same old. We do see the other Snorlax deck. Like I said, this Control deck looks like it's the same 60 as the other build, playing at the Pidgeot in the deck. Yeah, it looks like it's pretty much the same build as the other Snorlax list we looked at. So yeah, 2 Snorlax in day 2. Very interesting to see that Control does well. There's a lot of bigger Control players over in Europe, though, as opposed to North America, which I think is obviously the reason why we're seeing Control do this well. We got yet another Lost Box deck, Turbo Lost Box once again. I mean, we're just going to kind of quick look over these lists because they're all the same, basically, right? We do see another Miraidon here in day 2. This one does have the Squawk, not playing the Mew EX, just playing just kind of your box standard Path Miraidon deck. Another Rapid Strike here in day 2. With a Rayquaza, this is actually very interesting. Seeing a Rayquaza and Rapid Strike is obviously a little polarizing, but it does make sense because Rayquaza's ability lets you discard your hand and draw 3 cards. Rayquaza is also not really a liability. It's got no weakness. It's, you already have VMAXs in place, so it's not like Rayquaza is going to be hunted down. It's got a 2 retreat cost, so as long as there's a Tower of Water in play, Rayquaza can always retreat. So the reason behind Rayquaza just has to be because of the extra draw that you gain from it. That's basically about it, right? It's got to help against those late-game Ionos, which makes sense. You have the Karina, too, but the Rayquaza can also help you out, especially if your Octillery gets targeted. It's a very interesting card to see teched into this deck. And it is a Rapid Strike, like I said. You can search it with Octillery. Very interesting to see Rayquaza in that list. That is a very interesting list for sure. Another Lost Tina. This one plays Thornton, and only one path. One path is kind of insane, actually, but the Thornton definitely can be kind of cool, kind of catch people off guard. Thornton and Giratina. We got another Arc pile, and this time it's Arc Gudra. It's Arc Gudra Bibarels, so very much just a Judge Path deck, and also playing Iono. But yeah, Gudra's kind of cool. I mean, Gudra's just one of those decent cards. Very good against Lugia. That's kind of the draw of playing Gudra right now, right? It's very good against Lugia, and that's one reason why we're seeing Gudra do so well, because, yeah, it's pretty well positioned versus the Lugia decks. We got another double Turbo Mew. Not playing any Oricorio or Luxray. Just kind of straightforward build with just Genesect and Mews. Triple Judge, 3 Boss, 1 Iono. There you go. A couple Shenpaos back-to-back here. Looks like one of them, yeah, we got the Canadian build, and the other build, is it the same? It is indeed the Canadian build of Shenpao. Playing 3 Pokestop and then the Vacuum, which can be grabbed with Irida. Yet another Rapid Strike deck. This one not playing the Rayquaza VMAX, but it is Rapid Strike with, yeah, just doing stuff Rapid Strike UX to do. We'll see if Rayquaza ends up translating over in Toronto. I'd like to see somebody get day 2 with that Rayquaza Rapid Strike deck. It'd be kind of sick. We do have another Turbo Lost Box here to look at. Kind of skimming through. We got another Miraidon deck here. Playing that Luxray. The idea behind Luxray is Cleansing Gloves, Luxray, Zapdos, lets you one-shot Comfeys, and lets you discard Colors from their hand. Alongside Judge, you can make it very annoying for Lost Box to play against Luxray. Luxray is actually kind of a smart card right now in Miraidon. I think we're going to see a little bit more of that in Toronto, so keep your eye on that going forward. We got another Charizard. Not as much Charizard in day 2 this time, but this is a very cool Charizard deck. This is a Charizard Path deck, but it plays a Cramorant. So the idea behind Cramorant is it's an attacker that, works a single prizer because you do play quad Colress and 3 Lost Vacuums. So you can actually easily build your Lost Zone up pretty quickly. When you do that, you get access to Cram. So being able to path your opponent with Charizard is smart. Obviously, you do shut off your own ability, but you're not playing Pidgeot. You're actually playing Bibarel instead as your draw engine. This is a very unique Charizard deck, and I'm loving it, man. It's a cool take. The Cramorant's a cool attacker. It obviously lets you 2-shot stuff as a 1-prizer. There's a lot of value you can get out of Cram. This is a really unique take on Charizard. We'll have to see if that ends up getting adapted going forward. We got yet another Guardian day 2 with the Tomb, double reversal. We got another Guardy right behind it with a different tech card. We actually see a Cheryl in the deck. That's something you don't usually see in Guardy. But Cheryl can heal your Pokemon. This can make things very awkward for Lost Box sometimes. But what's better in that point, right? It's like, is it better to play Iono or play Cheryl in that scenario? But it is cool to see somebody play a Cheryl in Guardy. That's definitely an interesting take on the deck. We got a couple Lost Tinas back-to-back here. Lost Tina doing well Europe. I mean, it makes sense. It could be a deck that Europeans would maybe prefer to play over the North Americans. But this also could just mean that Tina's having a comeback. And I think Giratina is potentially on the cusp of having a comeback, right? It's interesting though, because like a deck like Tina doesn't do as well right now in North America, but over in Europe it does well. It's like how Mew wins in Europe, but doesn't have the best placements in America compared to Europe. We got another Arvinzard deck here in day 2 with the Defiance Band, Choice Belt, yeah, Entei and the Luminion. Yeah, very interesting take there. Not as much Charizard in day 2 as I thought there would be, which is interesting. Another Miraidon in day 2. This one does play that Mew EX. This is also playing Serena. That's the card you don't really see in Miraidon anymore. It's also playing a Jet Energy, which is also very spicy. I don't know about the Jet Energy because, like, I feel like you have to play a lot of Lightning. 13 Lightning is a lot still, but sometimes 30 Lightning does not get you there. I think you still need the 14th Energy. I've even seen people argue, hey, why not play 15? Energy. We got another Single Strike Lugia. Ooh, Single Strike Lugia with some insane technology. It's actually playing a Deoxys, so really trying to capitalize on the 1-prize attackers. Now, the one of T-Tar and Mew is interesting, and also playing Roseanne's backup's also interesting. This is a very interesting take. I do like the idea of Deoxys, though, because you can literally just put a double turbo and a fusion energy on it and attack with it. It does 160 damage. It's pretty bulky, too. I like that. That's smart. The Deoxys is interesting. It's an interesting idea for sure, right? Yeah. More single prizers Lugia gets, the better it is, in my opinion. That is really cool. This is an interesting Lugia single strike deck for sure. We see another Charizard here doing pretty good. Sablezard, I mean. Sorry, not Lost. It wasn't. I sometimes get confused. I see it's Charizard Lost, and I'm like, oh, it's Lost Zard. No, it's Sablezard. This is kind of the sleeper Lost Box deck right now. Nobody really respects or thinks about this deck, but I do think that Sablezard is actually still a strong archetype. Just nobody really plays it for whatever reason. But it is still a strong deck, in my opinion. We see another Miraidon in day 2, playing the Mew and the Squawk and stuff. Yeah, Miraidon doing Miraidon things. We got another Shenpao here. This one is not the Canadian Shenpao. It's actually playing some interesting cards like Rodom, V, and Forest Seal Stone. And Cynthia's Ambition and Double Arvin is interesting too. So a bit of a different take on Shenpao. And then we got another Charizard deck, and this time it is Arczard. So yeah, Arceus Charizard is still a deck that kind of floats around here and there. Is it the best way to play Charizard right now? Maybe not, because again, Arvinzard does have more advantages, but Arczard is still strong. I mean, Arceus is still a very strong card, obviously, for the setup. Lets you easily set up turn 2 Pidgeot and stuff. But you don't have Arvin, like, that's the trade-off. You don't get Arvin for Battle VIP, so your outs to VIP are a little bit thinner. So that's the downside of playing Arczard, in my opinion. Got another Lugia. This time it is a single strike Lugia, so a lot more single strike Lugia in day 2 than I would have expected. But again, I think single strike Lugia is still a very strong archetype right now that I think a lot of people really just don't respect or think of right now. But I really think they should because it's still like good. Couple more Lost Zones. We see a Kyogre build once again in day 2. And then we see another Lost Zone deck. We'll see if there's any Zamazenta, by the way. We haven't seen the Zamazenta Kyogre deck yet in day 2. So that's interesting. Another Miraidon here, doing pretty good in day 2, playing the Drapion and the Mew. Yeah, Drapion's not bad. I mean, if Fusion Mew's popping back up, playing Drapion isn't the worst thing ever because Spiritomb is not as good against Fusion Mew, obviously. We got another Shenpao in day 2. Looks like it is the Canadian Shenpao deck that we're used to seeing. We see an Arctina in day 2. Arctina's a deck that I think is kind of on the cusp of being decent right now. Playing the Mew EX actually is kind of cool. Mew does synergize with Bibarel, but you can, or Skwovet, sorry, but you can also build it up. Well, you can attach to it. With Arceus, you can literally just put a double turbo on it and then attach return to your Mew, and it's like the same thing, right? So yeah, I like it. Mew EX and Arctina is cool. Arctina does seem like a bit of a sleeper deck. I think it is slightly weak right now, though, because like Mew is popular. Arctina obviously is going to struggle against Mew EX when they can just copy your Giratina. But Arctina maybe is the better way to play Giratina right now. I don't know. Maybe Lostina is still better, but Arctina is still like just a perfectly fine deck, right? Another Arvinzard here in day 2. This time it is playing at that Pidgeot V, which I do like. The Pidgeot V can put itself back into the deck. Yeah, just Arvinzard with Pidgeot. Pretty cool stuff. Now we got a couple more Arc piles. We got an Arc Pika Vulpix deck. So Vulpix V-Star is kind of cute right now, right? The idea behind Vulpix is you're able to lock out a lot of decks from being able to attack you, like Shenpao and Charizard. And then obviously the Pikachu can be good against Lugia. It is sketchy though against Lugia. If you're playing against Lugia Colorless, sometimes you're going to play that Luxray, and that can be pretty bad. And then you can also run into some issues with other matchups where Pikachu's good against, but Pikachu definitely isn't bad for sure. I do like this. I mean, I'm a big fan of Arc piles, and it is cool to see these type of Arc piles do well with the Vulpix. We'll see where Vulpix is going into Toronto. And we got another Arc pile here. It is the Arc Gyarados deck. It looks like it is a little bit refined, a little bit more refined from the list from Sacramento. It actually does play the Poppy, which is actually a card that Nicolo was talking about maybe putting into the Arc Gyarados deck, was playing a 1-of Poppy, because you can move the energy off of a Pokemon onto the Radiant Greninja, and then out of nowhere attack with Radiant Greninja, because nobody's going to bench Manaphy against Greninja. It also plays a Mew EX this time too, and a Spiritomb, and yeah, really cool stuff to see. I don't know if Gyarados can really repeat history twice, especially in Toronto where we are expecting a lot more Miraidon, but it is cool to see somebody still get day 2 with Gyarados nonetheless. Another Guardy here in day 2. Again, Guardy was a pretty popular deck for Lille, right? Another Lostina. Lostina definitely had a decent performance this time around, which is interesting to see for sure. And then we got another Lost Fox deck. Looks like we haven't seen a single Zamazenta Kyogre deck yet, so that's interesting. No Zam Kyogre got day 2, but another Lost Tina got day 2. This one does play the Cross Switchers. Another build of Tina that we've kind of seen float around before is the Cross Switcher build of Tina. Yet another Guardian day 2. Playing Emergency Jelly. There's a card that we haven't seen in a while. And Town Store. That's a cool addition. I mean, if you're playing the Forest Seal and the Jelly, playing Town Store doesn't really seem like a bad idea. Let's see what we got next. We got a couple decks to go here, and then we're almost done. We got another Shenpao deck to look at. Arc Shenpao. Okay, it's Canadian Shenpao, but with a 1/1 Arc line. Well, it does play Lumineon and Cynthia too, I guess. But Arceus and Shenpao is not terrible, right? Another Miraidon in day 2. Yeah, no Mew or Drapion or anything, just kind of straightforward Miraidon. We got another Lost Tina here in day 2. Playing that Shaman V to tech for Charizard. Definitely not a bad card. It does play Cancer Cologne too, which is an interesting card also to play in the deck. You do have the Greninja, so you can pull off like Greninja Cologne plays, which I guess is kind of cute. That's interesting. And then finally, we got another Arvinzard in day 2. This one does play Delphox V. That's a card that some Arvinzards are playing. This Arvinzard is a bit different too. It's also playing Pogozard and Cynthia's Ambition. Huh. It's playing a lot of cards. Cynthia, Iono, Research, Serena, Avery. I didn't even see those at first. Okay, this is a very spicy Arvinzard build. That's cool. It got day 2, so it is pretty legit, right? It's an interesting idea. Delphox definitely something that we might see in Charizard going forward because, again, that snipe attack is pretty good. Nobody benches Manaphy against Charizard right now, right? So it's interesting. Interesting for sure. I keep saying interesting, but, like, this is literally the definition of interesting right now. But, yeah, there you go. That is it for the entirety, it looks like, of day 2 of Lille. Let me refresh the page just to make sure Yep, that's it. That looks like it's all the day 2 decks here in Lille. But yeah, interesting stuff. We see quite a few control decks, few arc piles doing well. Bana getting day 2 is interesting. Lost Tina had a pretty good showing this time around. And of course, Mew winning is obviously going to be interesting, as Mew does better in Europe than it does in America sometimes. But we'll see where Mew goes into Toronto. I think Mew's still going to be fine in Toronto. I think people will pilot it because there's a lot of people that like just to play Mew in general, right? So we'll see where it all goes. But that'll be it for me on today's video here on the second channel. Hopefully you got some cool information out of today's video. If you're going to Toronto Regionals this weekend, I will be in attendance. I don't even know what I'm playing yet. I'm kind of sold on a few different decks, but we'll have to see how it all goes. And maybe some of the decks here kind of gives me a little bit of hope for the future of what to see being played in Toronto. But hope you enjoyed the video here on the second channel, and I will see you on another video here. Bye-bye.